This is Paul Brerin here from TinkerTry.com, and I'm here at VMworld 2015 as an official blogger. And today I'd like to introduce you to Ken LeTourneau. We were talking a little bit just before I started the camera rolling about the Intel chipset, the Xeon D1540, a system on a chip, tiny little efficient chip. And what it has on there is 2 bays for SSDs, like the 2.5-inch drives that have been loaned to me to try to make a vSAN this month. Can you tell me a little bit about what went into getting on the hardware compatibility list for VMware for vSAN?
Yeah, so from my perspective, it's a fairly straight ask when you're talking in terms of what we have our SATA SSDs, which I believe are the ones you were sampled. To get on the compatibility list for vSAN, there's really 3 things that need to happen. You have what's called IOVP certification for the I/O controller, and for a SATA, that's going to be an HBA or a RAID card or a local AHCI. However, Virtual SAN doesn't allow configuration with local AHCI. So you're looking at a RAID card or an HBA set up in pass-through mode. The next piece for that is what they call vSAN I/O controller certification. Again, we don't make the controllers, so all those certifications are basically done for us by partners like Avago or so forth. So as a customer looking for an SSD in Virtual SAN, when they go to the Intel list or the Intel parts, all we have is what's called a paper certification process for Virtual SAN. We go back and forth with VMware, open a couple of service requests detailing specifics of the SSD in terms of performance, endurance, read-write capabilities, again, in terms of IOPS. What's some other major ones there? We report latencies for data gathering purposes for VMware as they continue to refine the process. But really, for that one, it's very straightforward for a SATA SSD. For our perspective, it's just a paper certification process. Fill out a questionnaire, submit our reliability demonstration testing, show that we've used several hundred samples in a lab for at least a month at a time to back up our claims for failure rates, to back up our claims for uncorrectable bit error rates. So basically all the data we put in our data sheet, we submit some backing evidence for above and beyond the data sheet. VMware reviews those. They get back to us with questions if there's follow-up documentation needed. And so it's just a back and forth process. Again, for a SATA SSD, that maybe takes 1 to 2 weeks to complete. The turnaround is pretty quick. And our entire SATA family is qualified for Virtual SAN right now at any meaningful capacity point in terms of 2.5-inch form factors. Whether that's in an all-flash configuration in the write buffer tier or in a hybrid configuration as a cache tier, and also certified for all-flash capacity tiers.
I'm familiar with the process for like LSI RAID controllers and the caching layer. They actually specified a certain firmware. Do you know for vSAN, am I to look into that? Do I need to worry about the firmware level that's on these SSDs that have been loaned to me? Only from like a month ago, so they're likely to be fine anyway. But do you know if the firmware is on the hardware compatibility list? Is that an important piece to look at?
Sure. So when we first certify, we report the current rev of firmware that's been released, and we put a note in all our vSAN HCL listings to say, refer back to the vendor for any firmware updates. When you go through the qualification process, there's actually a checkbox that says, will all future firmware revisions be backwards compatible to the one you're certifying on? And if they're not for some reason, then you actually do want to go through a recertification.
What do you have nearby for hardware to show me today?
What are you most interested in? We've got some rack scale architecture designed for Evo Rail, or Evo, what was Evo Rack, but now Evo software defined data center suite. We have a static demo here of one of our Evo Rail ready configurations.
Let's look inside there.
Yeah, okay. All right, so this is a 2U chassis housing 4 individual nodes. These are V3 Xeon based. Support for 512 gigabytes of DDR4 memory in each node.
Okay. 4, 4, 4, 4.
Yep. So 1632s in that case.
Very nice.
Out back, we've got onboard LAN connections. We got our management LAN, and we have a reserve slot here for SFP.
These 1 or 10?
These, it's configurable. These are 1 on this particular model.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you went with 10, does it look different? Is there a daughter card or something involved?
Yeah, the 10 or the 40 will actually dock over here in one of the spare bays. So one other neat feature on this is each of these 4 nodes has 6 front drive bays, all 2.5-inch. The ones you see here with green tags, you can mix and match SATA or SAS. The blue tags are actually what's called U.2, what was called SFF 8639.
Ah, yes.
So you can put PCIe, SATA, or SAS drives into these. And so here we have an example of our actual U.2 form factor DCP 3700 SSD.
Okay. Heatsink on the bottom, huh?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you again for everything.
Yeah.
Appreciate your help.
Yep.
Good night.